March 27, 1999. Somewhere above the storm clouds of the Balkans, a plane that shouldn't exist on any radar screen cuts silently through the night. NATO's air campaign against Yugoslavia had been underway for just 3 days, a bombing campaign intended to force an end to the conflict in Kosovo. Night after night, waves of Allied aircraft crossed into Serbian airspace, confident in a technological advantage that had never once failed them in combat. It's called the F-117 Nighthawk, a jagged, angular shape unlike anything else in the sky, built for one purpose: to disappear. To a radar operator staring at his screen, this 30,000-pound aircraft doesn't look like a bomber at all. It looks like a tennis ball. If it shows up at all, that reputation was an exaggeration. The F-117 had flown hundreds of combat sorties across multiple conflicts by 1999, and not one had ever been shot down. Pilots who flew it were told in briefing after briefing that conventional air defense simply couldn't touch them. It wasn't arrogance, it was physics. The aircraft's faceted, angular skin was specifically engineered to scatter radar waves away from their source, instead of bouncing them back. And its skin was coated in radar-absorbent material that swallowed what little signal did return. At the controls sits Lieutenant Colonel Dale Zelko, flying deep into hostile airspace toward Belgrade, Serbia. His target, the headquarters of the Serbian Air Force. Tonight, though, the storm that hides him is also isolating him. His radar-hunting fighter escorts, the F-16s meant to sweep the sky ahead of him and take out any threats, are forced to turn back. The weather is too severe, too dangerous. Zelko flies on alone. No wingman, no cover. Just him, the storm, and a machine built on the promise that no one would ever see him coming. He has no way of knowing that, on the ground below, someone has been waiting for exactly this moment for weeks. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Zoltan Dani, commander of a Serbian surface-to-air missile battery, and a man everyone told was hunting an impossible target. Conventional wisdom said stealth aircraft simply couldn't be tracked, let alone shot down. NATO believed it. The Pentagon believed it. Even some of Dani's own commanders believed it. Dani didn't. He had spent the war studying his enemy's habits. The routes, the timing, the patterns nobody else had bothered tracking closely enough. NATO aircraft, he'd noticed, tended to fly familiar corridors, on familiar schedules, night after night, confident that stealth alone made caution unnecessary. Dani built his entire strategy around exploiting that overconfidence. He moved his missile battery constantly, sometimes multiple times a night, never staying in one position long enough to be targeted by the anti-radiation missiles NATO used to hunt and destroy air defense sites. He kept his radar transmissions short, seconds at a time, to avoid being detected the instant he switched it on. Other commanders in his position had already lost their batteries to exactly the kind of complacency Dani refused to allow. And tonight, intelligence from spies on the ground told him exactly what he needed to know. Allied aircraft were inbound. Dani made a decision that broke almost every rule his radar operators had been trained to follow. He activated his aging P-18 early warning radar, a Soviet-era system, decades old, that most Western analysts considered obsolete against modern aircraft, and set it to its lowest possible frequency. It went against everything modern anti-air doctrine taught. High frequencies gave sharper, cleaner images. Low frequencies were considered crude, old-fashioned, barely useful against a modern jet. But stealth technology like the F-117 was designed specifically to defeat high-frequency radar. The very wavelengths its angular skin was engineered to scatter. Dani gambled that the older, obsolete frequency, operating on a wavelength the aircraft's designers had never optimized against, might see what the new systems couldn't. Through the static, through the heavy interference of rain and rolling storm clouds, something appeared. A tiny flickering dot, barely there. Easy to dismiss as a glitch, a trick of the weather. Dani didn't dismiss it. Somewhere above him, completely unaware, Dale Zelko was flying straight toward the one man in the entire war who refused to believe the F-117 was invisible. He was about to prove them all wrong. Zelko reached his target, Below him, through the storm, the Serbian Air Force headquarters sat exactly where the mission briefing said it would be. He opened his bomb bay doors, a routine necessary step to release his laser-guided payload. But for the F-117, that moment is its single greatest vulnerability. The stealth aircraft's entire design depends on its smooth, unbroken surfaces deflecting radar waves harmlessly away. The instant those bomb bay doors swing open, that seamless shape breaks. For a few critical seconds, the aircraft's radar signature doesn't look like a tennis ball anymore. It looks like a plane. Down on the ground, Danny's radar screen flickered, and for just a moment, the ghost became solid. He didn't hesitate. "Lock on," he ordered. His crew, trained for months on exactly this scenario, reacted instantly. Two Soviet-made surface-to-air missiles roared off their launch rails into the storm. Above the target, Željko had already released his bombs. The laser-guided payload found its mark. Mission accomplished, technically. The strike was a success. He had done exactly what he was sent to do. For a few brief seconds, as he began to bank away from the target, it must have felt like the hardest part of the night was already behind him. Then his cockpit exploded with sound. Missile lock warning alarms screamed through the aircraft. Željko didn't need to ask what was happening. He threw the Nighthawk into violent evasive maneuvers, braking hard, fighting to shake whatever was tracking him. A plane that had never been designed with dogfight-style agility in mind, built instead for stealth over speed, for invisibility over evasion. It was a design trade-off that had never mattered before tonight. Tonight, it mattered enormously. The first missile shot past his canopy, close enough to see, close enough to feel, but it missed. The second one didn't. It detonated near his left wing, and in an instant, the aircraft that was never supposed to be found came apart around him. Warning lights flooded the cockpit. Alarms Željko had never heard outside of a simulator all screamed at once. The Nighthawk spun violently out of control, tumbling through the storm-black sky, wingless, powerless, falling. Extreme G-forces pinned Željko against his seat, crushing the air from his lungs, making even the simplest movement feel impossible. His vision narrowed. His arms felt like they weighed 100 pounds each. He reached for his ejection handles anyway. With everything he had left, he pulled. The canopy blew away, and Željko rocketed out of the burning wreckage of America's most advanced stealth bomber. He was alive, but he was also now a single, unarmed American pilot, parachuting down into the middle of hostile territory, with an entire nation's military about to come looking for him. The hunt for the invisible man was about to begin. As Željko descended through the darkness, dangling beneath his parachute, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. His canopy was bright orange, a standard safety feature designed to help rescuers spot a downed pilot from the air. Tonight, it made him impossible to miss from the ground, too. He fought the urge to panic and reached for his survival radio, broadcasting a mayday call into the storm. A desperate signal with no way of knowing if anyone was listening. Somewhere, an Allied aircraft picked it up. Help was coming. But it would take hours. And Željko had no idea if he'd survive long enough to see it arrive. The moment his boots hit the ground, deep in enemy territory, training took over. He gathered his parachute, found a nearby drainage ditch, and disappeared into it, pressing himself into the mud, smearing it across his uniform and face, doing everything he could to become part of the landscape itself. He didn't have to wait long. Serbian soldiers, police, and armed civilians flooded the area within minutes, forming a search net that tightened with every passing hour. Vehicles combed the roads, flashlight beams swept across the hillside, voices called out in the dark, closer each time. Then came the dog. A search dog, straining against its handler's leash, tracked directly toward the ditch where Željko lay motionless in the mud. It stopped right at the edge of his hiding place. For a moment, everything was silence. The dog's handler was still several yards back. Željko's hand closed around his survival knife. He prepared himself to do the unthinkable, to buy even a few more seconds of silence. But he hesitated. Killing the dog wouldn't guarantee silence. It might do the opposite, draw the handler in even faster. So Željko stayed still, silent, waiting, every second stretching longer than the one before it. The dog sniffed, paused, and turned away. For reasons no one will ever fully know, the animal simply lost interest and moved on, its handler following it deeper into the darkness, away from the ditch, continuing the search in the wrong direction entirely. Hours crawled by. Zelko lay in the mud, soaked, freezing, listening to search parties pass within feet of him again and again. Finally, in the pre-dawn darkness, he heard it, the unmistakable thrum of helicopter rotors in the distance, growing closer. The rescue helicopter was close. But Zelko's infrared strobe, the device meant to signal his exact position to the crew without alerting anyone else nearby, had malfunctioned. It refused to activate no matter how many times he tried. He had seconds to make an impossible choice. Without the strobe, the helicopter might fly right past him in the dark, unable to find one man hidden in acres of Serbian countryside, and simply move on to search elsewhere before enemy patrols closed in for good. So Zelko reached for his backup, a visual flare, bright, unmistakable, and impossible to hide from anyone watching, friendly or hostile. He popped it. Blinding red light lit up the hillside, visible not just to the approaching rescue helicopter, but to every Serbian patrol still searching for him in the dark. The gunners aboard the helicopter spotted it instantly and radioed back an urgent instruction. Kill the flare now, before it draws in the enemy faster than it draws in the rescue team. Zelko crushed it into the mud. The helicopter dropped low, fast, and dangerous, touching down just long enough for the crew to pull Zelko aboard. Enemy patrols were already closing in from multiple directions, weapons raised, racing toward the sound of the rotors cutting through the dark. The helicopter lifted off with only seconds to spare, clearing the tree line just as Serbian forces reached the field it had landed in, muzzle flashes visible behind them as the aircraft banked hard and disappeared back into friendly airspace. Dale Zelko had survived. In the years that followed, Zoltan Dani and his missile crew went down in military history as the only unit ever to shoot down an American stealth aircraft in combat, a feat the world's most advanced military believed was simply impossible. Dani would later be promoted, celebrated as a national hero in Serbia. His gamble with an obsolete radar system studied by military analysts around the world as one of the great asymmetric victories of modern air warfare. Pieces of Zelko's downed F-117 are still on display today at the Museum of Aviation in Belgrade. Silent proof that no machine, however advanced, is ever truly invisible. But the most extraordinary part of this story didn't happen on that stormy night at all. It happened 12 years later. A documentary filmmaker working on a project about the incident reached out to both men separately, the American pilot who had been shot down and the Serbian commander who had shot him down. Neither had ever met the other. Neither had ever spoken to the man on the opposite side of that night. Both men said yes. They met in person for the first time in 2011, more than a decade after their lives had been connected by a missile in a stormy sky. There was no guarantee the meeting would go well. Old enemies from old wars don't always find peace simply by shaking hands. But something unexpected happened instead. They shook hands, and then they talked, not about the mission, not about the missile or the wreckage or the war, but about who they had each been on that stormy night. Dani wanted to know if Zelko had been afraid. Zelko wanted to know how Dani had managed to see him at all. What began as a documentary interview turned into something neither man expected. Over the following years, they stayed in contact. They traveled together. They spoke publicly, side by side, about reconciliation and the strange, unrepeatable bond shared by two men who had once tried in their own ways to end each other's lives, and instead ended up understanding them better than almost anyone else alive could. Dani would later say that meeting Zelko helped him make peace with a war that had cost his country and his region so much. Zelko would say that meeting Dani reminded him that the man on the other end of a missile lock was never just a target. He was a person doing his job, just as scared and just as human as anyone else in that storm. When the hunter and the hunted finally met, not as enemies, but as two men who had survived the same impossible night, they shook hands. And somehow, against every possible odds, they became friends. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, there are more incredible true stories waiting on History Reborn channel new cinematic documentaries every day. Subscribe so you never miss the untold stories that shaped our world.